Okay, you hear me all right? Yeah. Well, I'm really excited to be here again, and thank you, Pastor, for this opportunity, and thank God for giving me another opportunity to preach His Word. When the pastor asked me if I could preach a message on Christmas, right, and so he sent me a text asking me if I could preach a message about Christmas. So when I read the message, I was a little, not sure about it because Christmas, I can't find Christmas in the Bible. So normally, when I put a message together, I go to the Bible and get the message together. So that should be a pretty short message. Christmas is not in the Bible. There you go. So we're all done. But you know how God is, and the more I start looking at it, and I start looking at the word Christmas, and I keep repeating Christmas. And then I think the bilingual part of me kicked in, and I saw two words, not one. And I said, Chris, started to turn into Christ, and then mas, which mas in Spanish means, in English means more. And I saw more Christ. Amen. More of Christ. And like, wow, God, when He really wants to give a message, He'll open your eyes and you start seeing things you've never seen before. So I've never seen it like that before, as Christmas as being more Christ. So, but then the next thing was, well, how am I going to explain all that? Right? So I was, asking, how am I going to explain this? Christmas, more about Christ. He said, why don't you start from the beginning? So that's a good idea. So he took me to the book of John. So in the book of John, chapter 1, verse 1 says, in the beginning. See how God is. See how He works. In the beginning. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through Him, and without Him nothing was made that was made. In Him was life, and the life was the light of men. And then on 1:14 it says, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld His glory, the glory as of the Holy begotten of the Father, full of the grace and truth. So the Word became flesh. Why? Why did the Word have to become flesh? Well, we have to go back to the actual beginning to understand why the Word became flesh. It all started in the garden with Adam and Eve. When God placed Adam and Eve in the garden and told them what to do and what not to do, gave them the rules, gave them specific instructions, He told them, don't eat of this fruit. And what happened? They disobeyed. The way I was seeing this is Adam and Eve didn't love God enough to be obedient and to believe and have faith in what He told them, because here you have a serpent that came and told them a lie, and they believed instead of believing God. So when you love God, you don't just let anyone come and bring you a different message and believe it. Right? So they failed, and they ate the fruit that they weren't supposed to eat. And so they lost the authority that was given to them by God. Right? And also, God was showing me this when this happened is when actually this started happening too, where men started blaming women for everything. right? Because when God came down and asked Adam, what have you done? And what did he say? Well, the woman you gave to me is the one that brought me the fruit, so I ate it. So now, that's where it all started. Just in case you were wondering, when men started blaming women for everything, that's where it started. So when that happened, so God knew what had happened, and because he loved his creation so much, he came up with a way right away to fix things. But according to God's timing, we know that 1 year could be one day could be 1,000 years, and 1,000 years could be 1 day. So he had already planned on how things were gonna get back to normal, to the way he wanted them to be. And so his plan was, because he loved his creation so much, his plan was to send his son to fix this. Where he says, God loved the world so much, that he gave his only begotten son. So the word became flesh. Right? So he said his plan was to send his son to save us. And the way it happened, the way everything happened, it was hard to believe at that time, and even to this day, it would be hard to believe how God did all this to send his son. I can see in Luke 1:26 says, God sent his angel Gabriel to let this teenage girl know that she was chosen by God to have his child. Can you imagine that? I mean, how shocked would you be if that happened to you? You're a teenage girl, a virgin teenage girl that was engaged to be married to Joseph, and an angel comes and tells you, that gives you this message that you were chosen by God and you're going to have his child. I mean, I can imagine back then how strict things were, even now, if someone, if that happened to someone now, I mean, who will believe it? And not just to believe it, but to go with it and to, accept it. I mean, it's a really hard thing to do. So that's where I know Christmas is about Jesus, is about him coming to this world, but I also want to look at what happened before. What happened so Jesus would come to this world. What about all the other people that involved with it, like Mary and Joseph, Adam and Eve? So Mary, she had to make a decision that it was gonna be meaning life or death to her. Because back then, if you were pregnant before you got married, you could be stoned to death. So it wasn't an easy choice. It wasn't an easy thing to say yes, but because she loved the Lord so much and she was obedient to the Lord and she had faith, she accepted it. But like I said, just thinking about it, when I was going through this and just thinking about it, that had to be really, it would be really hard for someone to, accept that. And for her to do it when she was just a teenage girl, it's a huge responsibility. Because I mean, you're talking about just your life, but the life of many people, right? But she was obedient, and then she accepted it, and then like in Luke 1:38, she said, "Let it be to me according to your word." Like, saying, "Okay, I accept it. I let God do His will. I have His child." And I'm thinking, it wouldn't be so much easier if the angel would have Mary and Joseph together, at the same time and give them the message. They probably would avoid a lot of things, but I guess that's not how God works sometimes. He was testing Mary. He was testing Mary, and thank God she passed the test. And she went through with it, even though it could mean her losing her life. You know, how many of us can make that choice right now? You know, if God asks you to do something, you know you could lose your life. I mean, will you say yes? I mean, that's not an easy thing to do, and she did it. And like I said, to me it would have been so much easier. You know, why not have them together and have the angel give them the message, and that way Joseph would know what's going on. But no, I can see that it was like 3 months before he knew, because in Luke 1:56 says Mary stayed with Elizabeth for about 3 months and then returned home. So Joseph didn't know about it. You know, like I said, Mary didn't say anything to Joseph about the encounter and the pregnancy for about 3 months, as we can see in Matthew 1:18 to 19, that when Joseph found out, you know, when Joseph found out he was going to divorce her. I mean, even nowadays, with people, you know, being okay with everything that happens in the world, and you know, people having children before marriage and all that, even that would be really hard to believe right now. If somebody, you know, comes and say to, if a, you know, teenage girl says to her boyfriend, whatever, I am pregnant by the Holy Spirit. I mean, can you imagine that, how that would go? Can you imagine how, you know, what would happen? I mean, that's not an easy thing either. You know, and Joseph, I mean, I can see here he was a good man, because he didn't just expose her and didn't, you know, tell everybody what happened, and Mary was pregnant and probably cheated on him or anything like that. So he was trying to do it quietly, because he cared for her, because he loved her. So that was the time for Joseph to be tested. You know, then he had a dream. An angel came to Joseph in a dream and told him, you know, he told him to take Mary as his wife, that the child that she was carrying, you know, was from God. So even that, it was a dream. Mary, the angel appeared to her. So she saw the angel. He didn't see the angel. He just had a dream, but he believed it. He believed in the message. So that shows me too that he loved God so much that he was obedient. Yeah, and he believed and had faith in what was going on, that it was truth, and he accepted it too. And he passed the test. And thank God they did. Right? Because now we have I was seeing two different scenarios here, where we had Adam and Eve that failed the test. They didn't love God enough to be obedient, and they ate the fruit. And then we have Joseph and Mary that passed the test. They loved God, they were obedient, and they followed through. And when I was seeing all this, I was amazed on how I never seen it before. But that's how the Holy Spirit works. Well, he shows you things in the Word that you never seen before. And it was amazing how, you know, to me, all this happened. And then, like I said, they came through, and the Word became flesh. Jesus had to come to this world. And then, as we can see, Jesus was not born in a castle to an earthly king. Right? We know the story. Every year we hear about the story. No, he wasn't born in a comfortable bed, surrounded by an army of human soldiers. Our king was born in a stable. His first bed was a manger, and his first visitors were like stable animals and shepherds. When the angels told of the good news of our newborn king to the shepherds, they ran to meet the king. You know, Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor." You know, they got the first They were the first ones to get the news of the newborn king. Not the kings, not the rich people, not any of them. It was the shepherds. The shepherds were considered back then some of the poorest people, the lowest in society. And they were the first ones to hear about this. So, the early kings and the kings and the royalty, they were not aware of this, because when the Magi came to ask the King Herod about the newborn king, he didn't know anything about it. He had the access to Scripture, he had about the prophecies and everything, and he didn't know anything about it. So he either didn't want to know, didn't care to know, didn't pay attention to it, but he didn't realize that Jesus was born. That's how bad it was. So the Jews were expecting this super tall, muscular, powerful Messiah leading an army to destroy their enemies and to make them free from human oppression. That's what they're expecting, because that's what they believe in. But instead, they got this little baby born in a poor family. So who would believe that was the king, that was the Messiah they were waiting for? They didn't believe it. They didn't see it like that. So why did Jesus not come down from heaven in a godly form with an army of angels, and free the Jewish people? Why didn't he do that? This is where I think we can start adding the must to Christmas, to Christ, to more Christ. This is where I think we can start adding that. And I'll tell you why. See, because back then, the people back then would see power more in a physical form, like human strength, weapons, armies, etc. So if Jesus came down like that, the people would keep thinking and doing the same things. But Jesus came to show us more powerful weapons, more powerful ways that were not being used, and to use them against the real enemies that we have. Jesus came to show us how to love everyone, including our enemies, to forgive, to serve. Jesus opened our eyes so we can see the real enemy, which is not our brothers or sisters, because we're not fighting flesh or blood. Jesus showed us how to be free, to live free, and to help others find freedom from all kinds of oppression. That's why I think is Christ must, more Christ, more love, more compassion, more freedom, more forgiveness, more hope. That's what I think is Christ must. See, because the words, the key words that I see on all this that God was showing me is love, faith, and obedience. Love, faith, and obedience. To do, if you love God, you do His will. If you have faith, you believe His word, and you're obedient, you do His word, and you live according to His word. So what are you going to do this Christmas? When the enemy attacks you, comes against you, because he hates it when we celebrate the birth of Christ. Jesus, even if we don't have the exact date on when Jesus was born, but it reminds him of his defeat. So in this time of celebration, don't let him bring you down with sadness, stress, depression, anxiety, loneliness, whatever. Instead, give Christmas. Celebrate your freedom. Remember what our Father, what Jesus, what Mary and Joseph did for us, so we can have Christmas, more Christ, with love, faith, and obedience. That's, growing up, I remember that Christmas to me wasn't about gifts, presents, or anything like that. Back then, I mean, I grew up in a poor family, so we didn't even get presents in Christmas. We didn't do any of that. But I remember it was about family, about being, you're united with family, about sharing what you had with the neighbors, about spending time in church, even though I was going to a Catholic church then. But we would all get excited because we had a service at night and we would celebrate the birth of Christ. And that was what it was all about. We would all get real excited. All the children around the neighborhood would get together to celebrate. And and that's what it should be about, about Jesus, about celebrating our victory, about celebrating our freedom and everything that he's done for us. He gave up everything that he had up in heaven, he gave up being a king to come down and being a little baby, that needed someone to take care of him. It wasn't more about him taking care of us. It was at some point somebody had to take care of him. I mean, who would do that? What kind of king would do that? Only a king that loves you enough to give up everything for you and to be the ultimate sacrifice so we can be free and have everlasting life. He gave up his life, he gave up his blood to the last drop so you can be free. He did all that for you because he loves you. What are we going to do? In this time, I know a lot of people go through rough times, and especially this time, it's like you can feel more of the sadness sometimes. People are more down. A lot of people you talk to, they can tell you that they feel like something's not right. But of course, the enemy's not going to just let us celebrate Christmas. He's not just going to let everybody be happy about, this is the time when we celebrate the birth of Christ. Why would he do that? He's going to come against us, He never takes a break, so we need to remember that, But we have our King, our powerful King, that gives us the freedom. So celebrate that. There was a few years that me and my family didn't celebrate Christmas. We're going through I don't know what you can call it, like identity crisis on what Christianity was and what was the right thing and the wrong thing to do. So we didn't think celebrating Christmas was right, that it wasn't right for Christians to celebrate. I know we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, I think. And it just didn't feel right. Something was missing. We prayed, we read the Bible, but there was still something missing. It didn't feel like we were celebrating. So a couple of years ago, we started celebrating again. And there was a joy in the house, a different joy. And it wasn't about the presents, and it wasn't about having a Christmas tree. It was about celebrating the birth of Christ. When you don't have that in your life, something's missing. Because you don't have Jesus in your life, something's missing. So don't let the enemy steal that from you. Celebrate. Celebrate the birth of Christ. Appreciate what everybody went through. Because like I said, maybe, what Mary and Joseph did, it wasn't an easy thing to do. So we could be now celebrating that. Now that I'm thinking about it, can you imagine? And I wish there was more about the story about Joseph, how he took the news and everything. I don't see a lot about that, but I can't imagine what he'd had to deal with, bringing Mary to his house and his parents finding out, that she was already pregnant. Dealing with all that criticism and the people knowing about it. And, there's probably a lot of rejection from a lot of people because, that wasn't accepted back then. Sometimes it's not accepted now. People deal with that. So all that they went through so we could, so Christ could be born. I think I personally, I didn't really think about that before in so much detail as to why, everybody went through and why it happened. You know, that when I was doing this and I realized everything that happened now is amazing, and I appreciate it, and I want to let you guys know that, you know, let's be thankful, let's rejoice of the birth of Christ, because a lot of things happen for him to be here and to be born, you know, to become flesh. A lot of things happen, so let's not take it for granted. Let's, you know, so this time of the year, this Christmas, let's do that. Let's share more the love of Christ. You know, let's share the happiness. Let's share the hope. You know, if you see people around you that are down or they're sad, you know, if sometimes even if you don't know them, you can sometimes ask them if there's something you can do for them. You can pray for them. You know, sometimes they just need to talk about things. You know, let's share that. Let's be the light, you know, like the word says, if you had Christ in you, you know, you are the light. So let's be the light, you know, where the darkness is. Don't let the darkness take over, you know. Let's be the light, you know. Let's share Christ, because he was born for a reason, for you and I to have freedom. So I just want to leave you with that. Love, faith, and obedience. Don't forget love, faith, and obedience. We need that to succeed in our Christian life and to do God's will in our life. God bless you all. Thank you. You don't need this, right? Do you need this? No.
Good job.
Thank you.
You know, they even challenge us, but you also make it so we get to meet the Baptist to lunch. Hallelujah.